welcome to 1010 Politics, your political right to know outlet. I'm your host, as always, Edward J. Davis. And I just want to welcome everybody on this Friday, going into the weekend. I know you got plans. There's no COVID still out there lurking, hiding behind them corners. So you need to be careful and be mindful. There is a spike. It's already been sent all over the news. Even in Europe, this second wave has hit us, and we can't get too comfortable because people are still dying. And so we have a pretty good show for you today. As always, I'm bringing it to you live, hot off the press. This was the last day for early voting. I don't even know what time the polls closing, but I know if you can still get out there, go ahead and get it done. It's interesting though because it appears that a lot of records have been broken all over the nation with the amount of people who've already voted before the actual general election has even taken place. So it may not even be that, the lines may not even be long when it comes time to vote, in the general election, because most of the country's already voted, it appears. I know for a fact that Harris County, Fort Bend County, Brazoria County, a lot of areas around Texas have definitely broken records with historic turnouts for early voting. I myself went out there and cast my ballot for the people who I thought could do the best job to get us out of this mess. And I personally decided out of all of the polling stations I could have went to the early vote, I stopped by Sugarland. And the reason for that is it was many reasons. But I wanted to make myself a little uncomfortable because I could have went to Hightower, to some places where a lot of, faces of color would have been, and it'd have been like, we're glad you're voting. But I wanted to kind of go into an area where I don't think they were as happy to see black faces. And I'm only saying that not to say that Sugarland is an historically racist environment. What I am saying is that the statistics show, and I'll show you a clip in a second, that black people are 8 times more likely than white people to get stopped in Sugarland. They are 16 times more likely than white people to get stopped in Bel Air. In fact, this year, and I believe it's like last year as well, the Bel Air Police Department actually put over more black people than actually than the actual population of Bel Air of black people. So, nobody can really even explain the disproportionate stops and requests to search, and again, how the same dynamics are taking place, and I'm gonna say the same patterns are taking place, and we also see that it's consistent, not just from the stopping, but all the way through to the conviction. And that's unfortunate. So I want to walk into Sugarland and just say, hey, just make a little noise, just kind of, ruffle some feathers a little bit. And so for me, like I said, like I said in my social media post, whether or not any real change happened that day, it felt good. I had my 1010 badge on my face mask, and people were like, "What is that on your face? What are you doing here?" And they got all close up on me to make sure that the message was not was not a partisan message leaning toward any party, and also to make sure that I wasn't that I didn't have any intimidating messages. And so for me, it was just an irony that all of the years in history of voter suppression and people of color fighting for the right to vote and go to the polls, and even all the shenanigans going on right now with the fake ballot boxes in California, with Governor Abbott of Texas trying to make only one station available, per county or whatever to drop off these ballots. Just a bunch of shenanigans to try to continue to suppress the vote. But I just thought, for me, it was just the irony of all of the history and the years of voter suppression that was geared towards us, I was actually in that situation being screened for the possibility that I was going to be intimidating people and suppressing votes, and that was just so. The irony was just hilarious for me. But like I said, it was a moment that was just like a natural high. I was like, man, this is, who would have thought? Who would have thunk it, right? So, but that's specifically why I just made it my business just to drive a little bit further out and go to Sugar Land City Hall to cast my ballot. And you know, it was a pretty seamless process. They did make it easy, outside of, you know, harassing me about my badge that they still let me wear, by the way. But let's bring this back. Like I said again, early voting ends today. I got out there and did what I needed to do. We have to do something. And again, even if you don't think it counts, you do something that'll be quiet. And even if you're not in a position where you can vote, because that's another way they historically suppressed our vote. Okay, what we're gonna do is, now you want to go to the polls. We made that legal, so we can't take it from you, and we can't use all these other little tactics we used to use in the past. So what we'll do is, we'll criminalize the whole race. We'll start making things criminal, put that X on your back, now you can't vote anyway. And now it's been a hard struggle for felons to finally say, because before it was like, you couldn't vote period ever if you were a felon, especially like in places like Florida and other places. And here recently, you know, in the last few years, laws were passed to say that even if you have been convicted, once you are off paper, you know, and have done your time, and you know, and paid your dues to society, that you can be reinstated and have the right to vote again. So now I see a lot of brothers who, you know, who had that X on their back, now can again be full citizens and exercise their full rights as citizens again in the U.S. And so I know a lot of those brothers may still be on paper and can't vote. What I'm saying is, get out there and do something. Encourage the people you know to vote. Get out there and be on the front lines for change in other ways. The community needs so much. And so I'm not just saying that voting is the answer. I'm saying that it is an answer, and that any change is better than no change at all. Any action, any movement in the right direction is a step towards progress. And so we need to be mindful of that. So again, get out there and vote, and if you can't make it to early voting, when general elections are around the corner, get out there and do that. And so I will be interviewing today a significant individual in the race for a position in Harris County, and she's gonna inform us a lot more about the importance of voting and how to ensure that your vote counts. And so we'll get to that in a second. But what I want to do real quickly is go to one of these clips, and I want you to, so that you can idea what I'm talking about just the idea of policing, and because again, this is all politics. So we got to stay focused on that reality that this is all political in one form or another. But I do want you to get an idea of what I'm talking about, so I can lead into some other stuff. So watch this clip real quick. I'll be right back.
Summer of unrest heated up. Our 13 Investigates team dug deep, trying to figure out who gets stopped by police in Houston and around the country. Our investigative reporter, Ted Oberg, joins us now to explain what the team found. Ted?
Gina, this isn't as simple as figuring out who gets stopped more. That's easy to find. When you dig deeper, you find differences that are significant, but so are the fears and perceptions of young black men about getting stopped by police.
Every one of these young men we talked to can recall getting stopped by police.
I mean, your heart drops instantly at first.
For some, it was years ago.
I was only in kindergarten. Me and my father were just walking down the street.
If you close your eyes right now, can you still see that?
Oh, definitely.
Others more recent.
I remember us getting pulled over at our own driveway at home. The reason is because we had a broken tail light at the back. But there was like multiple police.
But all of them can recall a time when they didn't understand why they'd been singled out. And each of them,
My name is Ja'Cory Johnson,
Darius Heron,
Avery Robertson, Devon Williamson,
can tell us vividly about the repeated conversations they've had with their parents to keep them safe in those very moments.
It started off when I was starting 6th grade.
My mother, she's scared for my life.
Every time a new hashtag came up, we would have a conversation.
Don't move too fast.
Don't resist.
Always keep your hands on the steering wheel, both your hands.
Don't argue.
Don't make any sudden movements.
It is a conversation all too familiar in families of color across our country. One Houston Police Chief Art Acevedo has had with his own father and his own sons.
It is smart to have that conversation because you want to conduct yourself in a manner where you don't give a bad cop the opportunity to seize on a bad heart and act with a bad heart.
To get a sense of how serious this problem is, our ABC data team examined years of police stops in 12 cities across America. There isn't one where white drivers are more likely to be stopped than black drivers. In most, it's the other way around. But what's going on here in Houston?
I feel in Houston, we are better, but that doesn't mean we're the best because it can just happen anywhere.
The census says the white and black population in Houston are roughly the same size. And when our team looked at all traffic stops performed by HPD for years, black drivers and white drivers are stopped just about as often, a statistic that has improved in recent years. The data goes a little further, though. When an HPD officer decides to search someone, either by getting consent or after an arrest, black drivers in Houston are 3 times more likely to be searched.
Well, and so what I did like about that clip, although it's highlighting the disparity, and it's not as bad in Houston specifically. Like I said, that's why I talk about, because a lot of times we just think about Houston, we don't think about all the surrounding counties, right? Katy and Bel Air and Sugar Land and Pearland. And so you will see that those disparities rise, significantly when you get outside of Houston. Luckily, we've had quite a few, I guess, sheriffs of color, like our current Hispanic sheriff, like Bradford, and others. And so I think that because of that dynamic, that there's been more of an aggressive approach to monitoring and correcting that behavior. So you don't see as bad of a disparity in the Houston area specifically, but it's still there. It's still significant enough to need work. What I did like is that, our chief was not ashamed to say that he himself was given the talk about how to behave when pulled over by law enforcement, and has actually had to have the same conversation with his own children. And so it just shows that that's a reality that needs to be addressed and dealt with, and we can't sweep that kind of stuff under the rug. And so even when you're talking about getting out here and voting, a part of the voter suppression has actually been the policing itself, especially when you consider the fact that through the policing, it has caused many, a large portion of the population to not even be able to not qualify anymore to even vote. And so you understand the politics in that. It was definitely political strategy to begin the process of disqualifying as many of us from voting as possible through the criminal justice system, criminal injustice system. And so that everything's in the same vein. You just have to understand how the dots connect, and so that you can really understand what's going on. Because again, if we don't understand what's going on, we can never really address it. And unfortunately, too often we are dealing with a lot of the symptoms and never actually uprooting the problem and dealing with the root. So that was just an idea of what I'm talking about. But I want to get into this next clip because it's actually going to go more in detail about the disparities outside of Houston. And again, we need to be aware of the nature of institutionalized racism and how once it becomes institutionalized, it's really not about black and white anymore. The institution itself needs to be dealt with. And so I want to get into this next clip real quick, if it's up, and I'll be right back, and then we'll go into a quick break, and then I'll bring on my guests. So stay tuned.
hope is...
We didn't need to explain the statistics on unequal policing to O'Neill Williams.
The first time I got my driver's license, or a young teenage, 16, I realized that there was a difference in the way that I was treated as a kid.
Hands on the wheel, always yes sir, no sir to police officers. His parents taught him that, and he taught his. Thinking he could change the perception, Williams became a police officer himself, and when that didn't bring enough change, he became a lawyer and a public defender in Fort Bend County.
Almost every case made me go, come on.
Many of those, he says, from the city of Sugar Land. In Sugar Land, the largest city, towards the top of our analysis of statewide arrest reports sent to the FBI in 2018, African Americans are 8 times more likely to be arrested than whites when considering Sugar Land's population makeup. Is there any justification in your mind?
Absolutely not. There's no reason for disparity like that, except you're out there targeting black and brown people.
We first asked the Sugar Land Police Department about their own data 5 days ago, and they said they were willing to talk about it, but wanted to poll even more statistics and couldn't meet our deadline. But they didn't tell us that until after they knew our deadline. A few miles away, the Bel Air police chief had plenty to say.
We need to be truthful. We don't need to be defensive. If something comes up that sticks out, we need to look at it. We need to be able to explain it.
Bel Air Police Chief Byron Holloway wasn't surprised when we shared the stats that African Americans are 28 times more likely to be arrested than white people in Bel Air when taking Bel Air's population into account. Our analysis shows Bel Air police officers arrested more African Americans than there are African Americans who live in Bel Air.
We're looking at about 330,000 vehicles a day traveling through the city.
The chief tells us the stats that appear out of balance are a function of where the city is, surrounded by Houston and split by 610. The chief says they could only find one racial profiling complaint since 2013, and that was unfounded. He also said 51% of the African American arrests in Bel Air are for outstanding warrants. But an officer needs to stop someone before finding the warrant, and the chief wants to know more.
We will look at that as an organization, and my thought is to possibly do a deeper dive into the type of arrest and to see and to have a better understanding.
In all, there are 10 cities in the Houston area where African Americans are 5 times or more likely than whites to get arrested.
It happens everywhere.
Some places worse than others. We've mapped every active police department in Texas online. UH Downtown Critical Race Studies professor Dr. Kristen Anderson says this disparity isn't because African Americans commit more crime.
We know there's systemic racism because there's disparities in the treatment of black and brown people at every level of the criminal justice system. Who's pulled over, who's detained, who's arrested, who's convicted, who's sentenced for the exact same crimes.
O'Neill Williams, that former police officer, he's now Judge O'Neill Williams in Fort Bend County, where he says justice for all is more than a bumper sticker.
If you committed a crime, you committed a crime. I'm not here to let you go. But the definition of justice needs to be updated as it relates to black and brown people.
Ted Oberg, ABC 13 Eyewitness News.
Whew, that is terrible. I have to actually take back my. I thought that was bad when I said 16 times more likely, and I forgot just that quick because it's just, the disparities are so great everywhere that in Bel Air is actually 28 times more likely. That is unacceptable. And so we need to start addressing this stuff for real. Like I said, I just want y'all to hear that, from other media, other people besides me. So you don't think that it's just 10-10 politics that's just coming down hard on racial profiling and the institutionalized racism that exists. But we want to get out there and start and get ready to vote. That's for sure. And so we're going to go to a quick commercial break. But again, you hearing what you're hearing. And when we come back, I'll bring on my guest, Ms. Teneshia Hudspeth. Be right back. Hey, 10-10 politics. Let me get a hold to my guest and bring her in so we can start this great conversation. So my guest for today is, again, Teneshia Hudspeth. She's a candidate for Harris County Clerk. and she's going to just talk to us a lot about what's going on in the city and how they're preparing to handle this whole voting situation, this historic voting situation. So let me see if I can get her on. Hello, hello. Can she? I'm trying to see, can I hear you? Hello? Is the mic's muted? Let me see what's going on.
All right. Hello, can you hear me?
I hear you good. Can you hear me?
Oh, awesome. Yes, I can definitely hear you now. Good evening.
Good evening, good evening, good evening. It is a pleasure seeing your face. And actually, the world is so small. You know, this 5 degrees of separation thing. I actually saw your picture on somebody else's timeline, and I was like, wow. And you would know this name immediately when I say it, right? So, Sabina Sanderford Walker.
Absolutely.
I was one of her students.
Who doesn't know Sanderford Walker?
And everybody knows that phenomenal woman.
Absolutely. Right? I have to give her a lot of credit for being a very instrumental part of my career and where I've gotten. And so definitely groomed and taught. And she is still very much a part of my life now and where I'm going. So she means such a great deal to me, and I have such great respect for all the students that she has poured into over the years.
Yes, and she's turned out some high quality products. So I have no doubt that you are the woman for the job.
Awesome. Well, wow. Thank you so much for having me and allowing me to come on today and share with your audience such a timely topic.
Definitely. So let's jump right in. I want to first just I guess ask what your role is, what your background is, what you're running for, and then just let's just talk about the whole voting process and what's going on within Harris County.
Absolutely. You just stopped me where need be. So good evening, everyone. My name is Teneshia Hudspeth. I am the current Chief Deputy of the County Clerk's Office, which is second in command to the County Clerk. But I'm also running for the office of Harris County Clerk. And that race is normally a race a lot of people don't pay attention to. I always share and say I'm from Austin, Texas, but have been here in Houston for a very long time. So I have Houstonian roots as well. A graduate of Texas Southern University. And yes, go Tigers. And graduated from the School of Communications, where I went on to do communications in the political field and in public service, because I like to use the word public service over political, although it is political work. And so that's where most of my work has been in the offices in voter education and registration and making sure that individuals in our community, especially communities of color, are educated on their most fundamental right. And outside of that, I've worked in the community. I've served on the Urban League Board of Civic Engagement for the Houston Area Urban League Young Professionals. I've served in my sorority as a social action chair. And so I always tell people, hey, when I'm not actually getting paid to do the work that I'm doing, I actually do it because I really, truly love it and know that it's important. And so the Office of the County Clerk, as you know now, we run elections. Now, there will be some changes somewhat to how that process will work. But we run elections. That means everything from the time that you get your sample ballot to executing and voting, we handle those processes. The county clerk does a lot of other things as well. When you get married, you get your marriage license from our office. When you start your business, you get your DBA, or you're doing business as from our office. If you've ever started a liquor business, you get your liquor license from our office. Birth and death records, and then we're the official recorders of all Harris County archives, commissioner's court, probate courts, and civil courts. That's not always been the sexiest part of what this office does, right? The sexier part is elections. That's what everybody cares about and pays most attention to. And so here we are in an election cycle with record-breaking numbers of turnout because of the nature and how historical this election will be. So, the first thing I say out the gate when people ask, why is it so important for me to be a part of the process? Why is it so important for me to have my voice heard? It's because your vote is your seat at the table. And what do they say? If you are not at the table, you're on the menu. And so us as voters have to realize that we have to have our seat at the table. And so what we have noticed in this presidential election in this great county, that people are motivated, people are excited, people are ready for change if they're not excited, and they are showing up to exercise their most fundamental right. But Harris County, we've done some tremendous things to make sure that voters get, every single voter that's registered gets the opportunity to do so.
That's what I was going to ask you about.
All right, awesome. And so I'm going right into doing that. So right today is the last day to vote early. If you haven't had an opportunity to vote early, it's only 6:27 p.m. Central Standard Time. And if you're in Harris County and you're registered here, and I think most surrounding counties, Brazoria, Fort Bend, you can still go vote until 7 o'clock p.m. tonight at any voting center in Harris County. Right now, we have 102 early voting locations. We have outvoted 2016 presidential numbers in early voting than the whole entire results of the 2016 presidential election in Harris County. And so roughly earlier was around 1.3 million. We are slowly climbing to 1.4 million individuals who have already exercised their right to vote either early in person or by mail. Now we still have 2.4 registered, so we still got 1 million to go. And I say our work is not done until every voter has voted. And so again, if you're watching this, you're listening to this, don't hesitate, hop in your car, continue listening to the podcast, and go get your early vote in. As long as you're in the line by 7 o'clock, you're good to go. And so we had 122 voting locations. This is the first time we've ever partnered with larger entities. We partnered with the Houston Rockets, with the Houston Texans, and they opened up their doors to make them voting centers during early voting and for Election Day. So a part of voters feeling safe and going to a larger facility to proper social distance, those are just some of the locations that we were able to do that with. We expanded the amount of days of early voting. Normally it's about 12 days or so. This time we had 17 days total for individuals to vote early, which included multiple weekends. And this last week, extended hours. Just yesterday, voters in Harris County had the opportunity, this is the first time ever in the history of Harris County that voters were able to vote a total of 24 hours.
Wow. So really quickly, I know that you're responsible, the position is responsible for, I guess, voter education. What measures are being put in place to make voters feel safer about going to the polls and voting?
Very good question. So other than expanding the hours, the days, we have done something that's also monumental for the very first time, and that is put in place drive-through voting. Yes, drive-through voting. It's just like going to Sonic. The only difference is you don't get your favorite drink. You get your ballot box. You get your ballot in your car. And so drive-through voting, we've had a total of 10 locations this entire voting period, where you can go to any one of those 10 locations. You can find those locations at harrisvotes.com and see what location's closest to you to drive up and vote. And essentially, you're still qualifying. You still have to show your ID and information. The voter is provided hand sanitizer. The voter is also provided, finger cot that covers your finger. And essentially, you can go in and vote, sign, do everything without ever having physically touched the actual voting machine.
I did that.
Another measures that we put in place is that every voting location on election day, you will see, and we did the same thing for early voting, is there's a hand sanitizer machine immediately when you're walking in that you can use. The election workers will offer you a mask if you don't already come with PPE. We've worked around the clock to make sure we had enough PPE for our workers and the voters. The finger cots, the gloves, and just another step measure, we have 6 feet marking on all of our polling locations on the floor, where people will know how to 6 feet social distance, as well as the voting machines. They're all social distance 6 feet apart. And so essentially you can walk in and out of the voting location and never having truly exposed yourself in terms of not having proper PPE. We also have plexiglass between the election workers and the voters. And so not just the voters, it's really important for us to protect our voters. So the workers, so they have on masks and face shields. Wow. And so we have laid out every measure that we could possibly take to make sure that when voters come in, they feel safe, they feel secure, and they feel, competent about, going into the polling location and still being able to do everything, whether it's in person, whether it's by mail. We sent out automatically to all registered voters 65 and above their mail ballot applications. Our 65 and above individuals has been the hardest ones hit in this global pandemic.
I agree.
And so, and so one of the first things we did, instead of saying, hey, let's wait for them to apply, we went ahead and mailed out to everyone 65 and above those applications, and then they could make the choice whether they wanted to vote by mail or not. So those are just some of the measures we put in place.
Have you heard, or has there been recorded any significant voter suppression activity outside of course, what Governor Abbott attempted to do with the one location situation, and of course, the fake ballot boxes in California and all these other shenanigans? Have you heard any other attempts to suppress the vote in certain communities as we're getting towards this general election?
This entire county has been, there's been many attempts on our county and our leadership for voter suppression. You just mentioned one of them earlier, where we had initially set all of our county clerk annexes, all 11, as drop-off delivery locations for mail ballots. And the governor put out a proclamation out the gate to say, no, this is not safe, this is not secure, which we had went through all the measures with our Secretary of State and says, well, you know what, if you live over in Atascocita or you live in different areas of the county, you got to drive all the way to NRG if you want to drop off your ballot. And they knew that there was scare and nervousness and anxiety with voters about that vote by mail because of what the USPS system had started at the beginning of this entire, effort of voting. And so that was a very strong signal of voter suppression. We've also had, unfortunately, a certain political party, the Republican Party, who has come out directly against us to try and not validate drive-through voting. Again, before we did the drive-through voting procedures, we went through the Texas Secretary of State. We got the official approvals to move forward. And essentially, people have been drive-through voting for years, just not in the terms that we see it. There's always been an opportunity for what is called curbside voting legally for those that are disabled or that cannot get into the polling location. And so the only difference from curbside and drive-through is anybody can go and drive-through. Curbside was only specifically for those individuals that could not get out of their vehicles, for a specific purpose. And so there's been many attacks where there's been litigation and taken to the court on whether drive-through votes should be invalid because they believe that it was voter fraud or all of these different things going on. So again, there's been many measures of voter suppression. We have things going on at polling locations with individuals. But what I want to ensure this county is, one is, first, if you haven't voted, make a plan to vote.
Definitely.
Go to Harris Votes. Look at what location you're going to go, what day and time. Now we're, at the end of early voting, so election day is what's left. Make a plan to vote. Be prepared. Have your sample ballot with you. Be ready to go in and just get it done versus waiting to see and putting yourself in a position where it's the last hour before the polls are closing and you're shuffling to get there. Because I'll tell you, I'd like to believe that everyone means well with the political process, but unfortunately, there are going to be individuals purposely trying to distract election day turnout. And we've got to be mindful. We've got to be vigilant. And most of all, not buy into the hype or the misinformation campaigns that are going to spread between now and election day.
That's for sure. You are so well spoken, but I should expect that from from where you come from and who helped to groom you. Like again, it's rare that she. Well, I mean, I've never seen anything but the best come from that that class. But you want to talk about what you're running for?
Absolutely.
Right.
So I talked about earlier, everything we've been talking about this office is for the Harris County clerk. But the Harris County clerk does, it really just is specifically handles so many what we call recording all the major events of individuals' lives. We truly service every single resident of Harris County at some point in time of their life here. And, you know, part of my platform and what I'll be doing is one, is bringing notice to all of these vital services that individuals normally don't take attention to because until they have to come through that office, it's not really a matter. And so most of my career in the office was in voter education and community outreach and, you know, kind of grassroots work. And so I want that to also flow into the other areas of the office. How do we continue to serve people and serve them well, right? COVID is not going to go away tomorrow. And so we've got to figure out, how do we still serve people virtually? How do we still meet their needs, even at their doorstep, even if they can't get out? Or, you know, just thinking about the terms, it's hard to believe and it's sad to believe so many people have lost loved ones. Our probate courts and our will courts and getting that documentation could be a really difficult thing if you're not connected to get the information you need to be able to, you know, take care of your loved one. And so those are the discussions that I think, you know, people really don't really pay attention to. And so I really look forward to bringing more attention to all the really the best parts of our office: deed restrictions, property, you know, foreclosures, especially in communities of color. Now, again, I'll be servicing all of Harris County, no matter what their political backgrounds are, no matter who they come from. It will be a servicing to everyone. But, you know, I am especially passionate about the communities that I've come from, right? And the deficit in information that's shared in our communities.
And we know the need is there. I mean,
and the needs that are there. Exactly. And so as the next Harris County clerk, you know I'll be able to fulfill that. With COVID, there were so many inefficiencies that we knew our office had surfaced up. And, you know, implementing a customer service department is going to be one of the first things at the top of my list that we'll be doing, where people are not having to sit on the phone 20 minutes before being served. You know, it's simple stuff, but it's things that go a long way when you're servicing the community. And so that's part of it. The other part is I will sit on the election commission as one of the members that oversee elections and voter registration, because the dynamic of that office is getting ready to change, and holding it accountable that what we're doing today, equity wise, continues, you know, 5, 10, 15 years from now, when maybe we're not in leadership, that the equity gap is continued to be closed and that we're making voting safe, secure, and efficient for many years to come. And so that's what I offer. I've been in the office for 15 years. I started as an administrative assistant, so I know the nuts and bolts of it. And you don't do that kind of work because, you know, you just want a job for that long. You do it because you're really passionate about it, and you enjoy the work you do.
Yeah, because it definitely doesn't pay. I mean, it a lot at that level. So to stay in that long and work your way up, it just says again that you actually have true passion and compassion for the people, and you know, being truly about service and servicing
Absolutely.
others. So I love it. How do if people need information about how to get involved, or even where to go vote, or anything related to just information that's important and critical in this election to ensure that their voice is heard and their vote is counted, what information do you have related to that?
Absolutely. So harrisvotes.com, I mentioned it a couple of times earlier at the beginning of our interview. harrisvotes.com is really the best place for all voters to go if you're in Harris County. Now, if you're in Fort Bend or Brazoria or Montgomery, any of the surrounding counties, you have to go to your particular county's website to find out that information. But harrisvotes.com has all of the voting locations, the times and dates. We also have a wait time feature. So when it comes to election day, if you're nervous about lines or times, the wait time feature will show a green, yellow, or red light to indicate, you know, the type of traffic and maybe the next voting center you can go to. So, you know, over the last year or so, we've had voting centers where you can go vote anywhere, whether it's close to your home, church, you know, where you pick up your kids from school, wherever you choose to. And then if not, you can also call our hotline, 713-755-6965, 713-755-6965. And we're able to look up information, help voters out. And so my biggest message now is making a plan to vote. Make your plan to vote, execute, have your ballot ready. You can take that written ballot in the polling location with you. And it is a long ballot, so stay the course. And lastly, vote down the entire ballot. Don't leave any race unturned. My race is a local race, is at the very bottom of the ballot. And sometimes people miss those or look over those. But your local races meet you at your front door before your presidential and state races do. So pay attention and vote the entire ballot. Again, harrisvotes.com or our hotline, 713-755-6965.
Love it, love it, love it. And again, the name is Teneshia Hudspeth, right? And she is running for Harris County Clerk. So that name is on the ballot. Remember that name. And I mean, you have such a pleasing personality. And like I say, so well spoken. I'm going to steal that, the seat at the table on the menu. So I can have that?
You can absolutely use that. Please do. Those are things that have to wake people up to get them to understand the importance of it. It's one thing to tell people it's important to do it, but you've got to give them a clear picture of why they need to do it.
And what's at stake.
What's at stake, absolutely. And so not voting is just, can be, you're giving your seat up. You're basically saying, well, however it turns out, I'm accepting that. And sometimes, I've heard over this time frame, hey, well, I don't know that this candidate particularly, reflects my values or who I am or who I'm not. Well, I say you make the best choice and then you hold that person accountable. And there are many ways that you do that. I'm having an interview today. I'm talking about all the ways I'm going to serve our community. Whoever's in Harris County will need to hold me accountable to what I'm saying is that what comes out and that we're actually communicating that. And so again, Teneshia Hudspeth, I'm your Chief Deputy for Harris County Clerk, but I'm also running for Harris County Clerk, and I respectfully ask for your support and your vote November 3rd.
Well, Teneshia, that's our time. I really, really, really appreciate you for coming on. I know that, again, this is an extremely busy time for you. So the fact that just the fact that you took out, you carved out some space to inform the people, to state your case and why you are the best qualified for the position, that means a lot. And again, especially when, I'm not Steve Harvey or Oprah calling you, right? It's little old, Edward J. Davis, also TSU alum and a product of Sabina Sanderford Walker. But
that's right.
But again, the fact that you showed up and you informed the people, that means a lot. And the information was great. I wish you much success. I got a good feeling about it. I think the climate is right.
Well, thank you so much.
I think the climate is right.
I'm working to the very last vote is in. I want everybody to know that I'm not taking anything for granted. I'm working to the very last vote is counted.
I think the climate is right for your kind of change. And so again, I really appreciate you coming on. That's our time. Thank you again. I wish you much success. And I will, see you again soon, hopefully. Right?
Absolutely.
And maybe we can come back after the election.
The next interview is after the fact and talking about how we start this community effort.
I love it.
So thank you so much.
And we can do a debriefing, huh? And just talk about how things
do a debriefing.
All right, love it.
Thank you.
So
have
much
a great
again.
evening.
You take care. I'll see you soon.
Bye-bye.
Bye-bye. And that was our show. So, so much good information that was shared. It's hard to even follow that up with anything else. Just know that it's important to get out and vote. You've heard from Teneshia, who's running for Harris County Clerk, but she's one of many candidates. What she said, I want to end with. It's extremely important to vote all the way down the ballot if you're going to get out there and do it. understand that the local elections matter the most because, like she said, they're at your front door. Those are the people you can reach out and touch. Those are the people that you can hold more accountable for the things that go on in your community. And so, like I tell people all the time, judges are elected officials. A lot of people who have a strong decision-making power and determination on the course and direction of our communities and the impact on our communities, those are people that we can hold accountable and we can have a voice in who sits in those seats, who holds those positions, who carries out the the will of the people, because that's what their job is supposed to be about. And so it's important that you go all the way down that ballot, vote your conscience, make sure that you clearly pay attention to what's local, and again, maybe try to find as much you can about all of the candidates before you actually get out there and go to the polls. But definitely go all the way down that ballot and focus just as much and take just as seriously the local candidates as you do Biden or Trump. And so with that, I want to say, enjoy your weekend. I'm in a mohawk mood. I just feel like wearing mohawk today. No, actually, my barber, because of COVID, wasn't cutting. And so, not that he has COVID, but because of COVID, so I have to go ahead and rock the mohawk for this show. But again, stay tuned. I'm always gonna try to bring you the best. I'm gonna have a lot of those candidates back on after the election so we can see what went wrong, what went right, what could be done better. So we're gonna debrief. And I'm just looking forward to the outcomes. But no matter what the outcome, it'll never be a time to get lax, to get lazy, to get complacent, and to think that we still don't have a lot of work to do. So again, this was TNT in Politics. Have a great weekend. I'll see you next Friday, same time. And if you ain't, I was trying to say my partner's little phrase, because he's called a square guy, and he always tries to say, "Be there or you ain't square business," right? So I gotta come up with my own little phrase. But I will say I love the phrase that Teneshia said. I'm gonna steal it. Either you get a seat at the table, because if you're not sitting at the table, you're on the menu, right? So understand what's at stake, because you might be the steak. Woo! All right, later.